Welcome to Conspiracies Against Wellness with your host, Janelle Elgaway.
Good evening. Welcome to Conspiracies Against Wellness. I'm your host, Janelle Elgaway. If you have a question for tonight's guest, please call in at 415-915-2291. Tonight, guest Dr. Edward Spencer, a neurologist, will discuss why he lost his physician's license. We will also explore the links or similarities between the different epidemics throughout history in the United States and why it's important that we understand this. Welcome to Conspiracies Against Wellness, Dr. Spencer. How are you this evening?
Fine, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. So can you please tell me a little bit about yourself, about your education and profession?
Okay, I'm a retired neurologist. I was born a bit of time ago in 1935. I attended Stanford University, majored in chemistry. Yale University School of Medicine, and did a residency program in neurology at the University of California in San Francisco. And then I practiced neurology either in the Marin County and primarily in Sonoma County, Petaluma, until my forced retirement, let's put it that way. So, yes.
Okay, hang on one second here, too. Hey, Brian, something's going on with YouTube. Nobody's getting... Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so you were a neurologist, and in your career, you started becoming interested in vaccines. What started piquing your interest about vaccines?
Well, actually, in 1996, I began to study how the world works and why it was such a mess. And way back then, it wasn't nearly the mess it is now. What happened to me with vaccinations was I didn't give vaccinations. That wasn't my business. I was a medical neurologist. But there was something called the swine flu scandal in Europe. And I think it was about in 2010. And a friend clued me into this, and I began studying it. And it was pretty incredible. What it amounted to was that 70 kilograms of vaccine were sent to the Czech Republic for distribution into Eastern Europe. And somehow a technician there, probably notified, tipped off, I would hope, studied this vaccine, put it into ferrets, and all the ferrets died. Oh. So then when they looked at the vaccine, they found that it contained, I believe it was live seasonal flu virus, which is very infectious but not particularly lethal, unless someone is, very sick otherwise. And also bird flu virus, which is quite lethal but not very infectious. So if they had got that 70 kilograms of vaccination into the population of Eastern Europe, they would have had a nice little epidemic there. They would have had a lot of human petri dishes cooking up all kinds of stuff. And so as a result of suddenly finding out about that, and there were a lot of people talking about it, a doctor who was a nun, I believe, also spoke, Dr. Foucatis, about this. And what we found out then at that point, hadn't asked the question before, that the company that made the vaccination was not liable. The government, whatever government it was not liable. And that the doctor who prescribed the vaccination, the clinic, the nurse, whoever, nobody was liable for the vaccinations. And that's the way it is today. Whatever happens, they're not liable. Now, money does exchange hands. I think there's a vaccine injury program, and money does get out there. But this is just kind of to keep things quiet as they can. But nobody's liable.
Right.
So you have this stuff. The skin is there to defend us, right? It's the barrier, the wall of our fortress. So you go through that with a needle and inject all this stuff. So that's what I learned about the vaccines, and I thought, this is incredible. I will have to tell everybody. I'll tell everybody at my little hospital and some of the people up north in another hospital. And I did. And I was kind of shocked that nobody seemed interested about this. They just didn't care. And I said, the vaccines, we should look into vaccines more. I was incredibly naive at that time. Well, I'm naive now, but there was no reason for me to have this incredible doubt. But anyway, they came after me.
Who's they?
After that. They were the hospital administration, or the hospital system, the Physician Well-Being Committee, and that's something, and the state board.
Okay.
Because thou do not challenge vaccinations.
Right.
That's the word.
Was there anybody?
And I can tell you how all that would happen.
Yeah, please. Was anybody else speaking out about this at this time? When was this?
I think it was about 2010.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit before that. Yes, Dr. Rebecca Carley was speaking out, and I talked to her. I worked with her, and learned things from her. And she was being trashed big time by the medical board back east, and she lost her license, and she had some very interesting programs, but I just couldn't really work with her very readily, so that passed over. And I really didn't encounter anyone else at that time. I have talked to Dr. Wakefield, who would seem to me just a marvelous doctor, sort of the doctor you'd like to have. And he was a GI specialist, and mothers were calling him up, and he said, I'm not a vaccination guy. I'm not an immunology. And they said, well, my child who has autism also has problems with the gut. So that's where Dr. Wakefield studied. He's very persistent and determined man to do the right thing, and he studied this and began to see what the problem was. I think it was the NMR vaccination that was associated with these autoimmune disorders. So I did talk to him. I didn't talk to anybody in my local area. I did try to talk to the infectious disease specialist there, but she didn't care. She didn't care at all. And I wrote letters to the administrators and administrators of the hospital side, the system of the hospital up in Santa Rosa.
So
go ahead.
So when you started speaking out about this, what were you saying? Were you trying to educate people?
Well, what I knew, I knew at the time it was that this incredible swine flu scandal had gone on in Europe, and it was well covered and written about, and it would look like vaccinations could be a problem. And my statement, my stance was that we should look into this and learn more about vaccinations. It was pretty straightforward and relatively benign. I didn't say, dump all vaccinations at that time. I was just saying, no, we should look into it more.
Right.
And so what happened then was I got a call from the hospital well-being committee. Do you like that? The physician well-being committee. They wanted to meet with me. So I packed up my rolling little bag with all kinds of information on all kinds of things. Like I was studying chemtrails at that time, and it just seemed to be a lot of stuff that nobody was paying any attention to. I thought, well, these fine doctors will want to know what I have discovered. So I took my little wheeling cart in there, and they didn't care at all. They said, "This is all about you, Dr. Spencer. This is about you." And so they offered me the opportunity to see a regular doctor, a neuropsychologist, and a psychiatrist. Because obviously there was something wrong with me that I had challenged vaccinations. And here's the great part. They would choose these doctors, and I would pay. And so I said, okay, right then, because I was way behind the curve. That's what happens to doctors. You know, they're behind the curve. They don't know what the other people know. You know, they don't see the attack coming. Because who's been attacked like that before? So I thought about it for a while. I talked to other people. I talked to Dr. Carley, to someone else, and I said, no, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to do it. And so then I went back to the Physician Wellbeing Committee, and and I said I want this meeting transcribed, and so the secretary was there to do that. And one of the questions I asked, I said, "Do you, Dr. X," I'll call him Dr. X at this point, or some other name like that, "do you trust the government?" And he laughed and said no. And I asked the other doctor, there were two of them, in their big white coats, "Do you trust the government?" And he also laughed and said no. And I said, well, I'd like that in the record. Okay, it wasn't put in the record. So, you know, just the record that had been taken out. And they both laughed when I asked them if they trust the government. So the next thing that was going to happen, and I was getting advice from people, you know, out in the community. And remember, I'm even more naive then than I am now. And you know, and what's going down, and you know, should I get a lawyer? So the next step was, since I wasn't going to go to see these docs, these chosen docs with their pockets open, ready for me to stuff it with my money, so they can say that I'm crazy. Is basically what it comes down to. The next thing was to meet with the hospital executive committee. See, I met with two doctors, two knives, I guess I could call them, and so I was going to meet with the entire medical executive committee. I don't know how many doctors that were, and you know, I was getting advice, and somebody said, well, you know, if they go there, they'll 5150 you. That's when you're declared incompetent and you have to be put away in California. And, you know, put you in a straitjacket, so to speak, and take you away. Well, I didn't know if that was true or not. The one thing that was very true, that you couldn't bring a lawyer there. You had to come by yourself and face your physician's colleague. Now, okay, a few years before that would have been okay, because I'd been in Petaluma a long time. I knew everybody. I trusted them, and they trusted me. I was looking at the list of docs, and a lot of them, you know, were pediatricians giving vaccinations for money. And there was also, you know, an oncologist treating cancer there with that sort of stuff. And I thought, well, I don't have any friends in this thing. So I said, okay, I resigned from the medical staff.
Wow.
And they said, are you going to notify the medical board? And the guy, whoever it was, I can't remember his name right now, you know. And of course, they did notify the medical board.
Wow.
So what happens is that you, what this is a star chamber. And I think that word may actually come out of Elizabethan England early, that it's an unusual situation in which it's not really a legal situation. It's way worse than that. And that you don't have representation. And it's basically that you've transgressed something politically. Okay. So it's a matter of power. And actually, I just have to throw this out for what I'm going to talk about next. Dr. John Mack at Harvard, a psychiatrist, underwent the same sort of thing. And what he was doing, he was interviewing people who had been abducted, who had being abducted by extraterrestrials. He studied them in great detail, and Harvard came after him. And it was the same sort of thing, a star chamber type situation in which, you pay your own expenses, nobody's going to help you. No, you can't bring a lawyer, and you don't know what they're saying or doing.
Right.
And that's I think quite common out there in the medical profession when you're dealing with a politically charged, high profit, high dollar thing like vaccination.
Right.
So I resigned, and then the medical board called me up, and I went to the medical board, and I hired an attorney to do this, and he. So you were given you were allowed $30K for situations like this. If you had to deal with the board, the attorney would help you. So he, and put this one in quotes, we went around, he did things, and finally he said, well, I can't do anything for you. Some nurse, he used an example of a nurse, some other part of the world, had given up, so he gave up. And I couldn't help but notice that the $30,000 had just run out.
Wow.
When this happened. So there it was, and I wasn't all that young at that point, and I just retired and continued to do my studies, as I'm doing now, on what's wrong with everything.
Okay.
And there's quite a lot. So, and of course, then I've learned a lot I've learned about many other physicians who have run afoul of the vaccine business. And I knew as a personal friend of Eustace Mullins, a writer who's written many books, and one of his books was Murder by Injection. And I learned more about autism and other things. That was not big when I fell into the pit. Right. The landmine blew up, and I fell into the pit. So I didn't know a lot about all of that at all, really, at that time. And well, that's basically that story.
Okay, we're gonna take a quick call if you don't mind. Caller from area code 40. Caller from area code 402. What's your name and where are you from? Hello, caller from area code 4. Hi. What's your name?
Yeah. Well, this is Pat, and I'm not necessarily interested in talking, but I would like to bring up, and I really enjoy what I'm hearing right now, and this is really controversial. How about the name of Dr. Andrew Moulton, deceased?
Well, he was.
I know. I hope that doesn't put you on the spot, but I had to ask.
Well, I haven't studied. He was a holistic physician, right? A naturopath. He learned about vaccinations and what was in them. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he met this Grim Reaper in some form.
Well, his thesis was that we are experiencing microvascular impediments from vaccine adjuvants, and that we were experiencing gene shunts and enzyme derailments. They were very direct attacks from the vaccines as they're currently constituted, which then contributed to all the autoimmune disease potentials, all the neurological potentials, gut bacteria, because that was part of the Wakefield study. So he was connecting a lot of dots, not just in food and nutrition and natural health, but inside the damages that were caused, set up by, or created by pharmaceutical interventions. Post the vaccines, then we experience antibiotic assaults.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I had read about Dr. Moulton, but it's been a number of years back because I've gone on to other things. And I should add in my story that there was no patient complaint, no patient injury. No patient came said Dr. Spencer should be cast aside. It was all administrative stuff. And yes, that information is on Dr. Moulton is very important. And vaccinations, which are safe and effective, if you don't mind getting sick and dying, I guess that's what would be and not becoming immune. I mean, vaccinations are basically a horror at this point. And I didn't know that, and if the caller is still there, what did happen to Dr. Moulton? He did die. He was murdered, was he not?
Well, you kind of alluded to it. They brought him before a psychiatric board and the medical board in Canada and told him he could continue to practice, but he had to do certain things, maintain his medication, and he couldn't speak anymore about the topic of vaccine injury.
Yeah.
And I'm in contact with his biochemist, and she's under threat, has been under threat, and fears for her life. But it's my opinion that they used his medications. He figured out a way to make it look like the medications are being administered and present, and they saw that, figured that out, and pretty soon he was gone.
Well, I was trying to look him up right now because I really don't know anything. What's his first name?
Andrew.
Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Andrew Moulton. It saved Canada. Yeah. Well, I don't really know his story, but he's still alive. Is that right?
He is deceased since 2014.
2014. And how did he die?
Well, it's my interpretation and my impression and my opinion that they took him out with his medication.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know what medications he was taking or is supposed to be taking?
I'll just call them head-bending meds.
Oh, you mean psych medicines? They were trying to
Yes.
trying to fix his brain, so he wouldn't talk about what was going on. Yeah,
Correct.
yeah. Well, that's standard. I'm afraid medicine is a disaster, and so is the justice system and the legal system. And the legal system is in some way pivotal, because if you're trying to do something, you need enforcement, and you don't have it because of the legal system. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Pat, did you have any other questions at all?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm going to mute out. I just want to tell you I love what I'm hearing.
Well, thank you for calling in. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Dr. Spencer, you mentioned medicine is a disaster. What did you mean by that?
Well, shut off. I mean that that you don't want to get sick and go to a hospital or see a doctor if you can possibly avoid it, because a big cause of death, and I'm not specific with numbers, is the medication, is medical problems, medications, and what's procedures done at the hospital. Mm-hmm. Now, and I can't at this point be specific because I haven't been studying this. This is something I went over with back then and back then, and
Okay.
It's gotten worse. Let's say the treatment for cancer seems to be incorrect by and large. The treatment by the chemotherapy and the radiation are destructive towards most of the human body, and treating cancer perhaps by bulking up or improving the immune system is probably a better way to go at it.
Do you believe? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, do you believe that chemo and radiation actually can kill you instead of help you if you have cancer?
Well, it certainly can kill you if you get enough of it.
Right.
and you know, and I watched the Ty Bollinger series on the truth about cancer, and I've looked at a number of sites on this, and you know, and it's kind of it's scary. It doesn't look like that we're in the modern world when it comes to the treatment of cancer. Now, I started on this way back at about the time when I was looking at medicine by looking at Royal Raymond Rife. Do you know that name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Go ahead.
This was in the 1930s.
Okay.
And he was in Southern California, I think, Pasadena. A clear genius. And he did something with Temco, Mr. Temkin, who made the ball bearings. He was able to analyze the metals and save them a huge amount of money. So the Temkin family supported his research. And what he did was to develop a device to treat pathogens with frequencies. And that included bacteria, I think virus, and cancer. So he started, I think, with bacteria. And to see what he was doing, he invented also a microscope where the beams of light did not cross, did not create interference. And he was able to see living organisms. And this thing magnified up to the level of electron microscopy. It was enormously powerful.
So what were these organisms?
Well, you know, essentially all diseases.
Okay.
You know, tuberculosis. I can't name them what they were right now, but he could actually see them lyse. He could see them, the bacteria fall apart when he turned the frequency machine on. And there again, I didn't study up on this. I mean, this is like I looked at this way back when, and you say, wow, you know, look what they didn't tell us about, because nobody ever told me about this in medical school or before that.
Right.
So they had a dinner for him, a banquet in, I believe it was Pasadena. A lot of many very prominent physicians were there, and the motto of this banquet was "In honor of the end of all disease." Now that's quite a little title there. He also he started with bacteria. He also treated some cancer patients with extraordinary success. And what happened so this is in 1930, right? The late 1930s. But Morris Fishbein of the AMA did him in. They got involved in the legal thing. He had to testify all the time, daily, at a trial which dealt with money and property rights, and he started drinking, and I think, you know, just went out of the picture.
Right.
And then the equipment was sent to England, but then World War II intervened. So what seemed to be an absolutely extraordinary advance in medicine, really incredible, was shut down.
Right.
Nowadays we hear, this did not use antibiotics. This used frequencies, which were applied by his electronic devices. And so now we're hearing about, you know, the various things that are no longer susceptible, become antibiotic resistant. We heard about the flesh-eating staphylococcus. Right. All of that have been going on since this. So this is, you know, about 100 years, 90 years or so, that this incredible technology has been denied to us.
Yeah.
And people who are trying to use it had some degree of it Well, the federal marshals would come knocking at their door, take the machine.
Have you ever?
So,
did you hear about the polio vaccine with was it Dr. Mary? Oh, sugar, forget her last name. Edward Haslam wrote Dr. Mary's Monkeys, I remember, and it was about with the polio vaccine, and it was the same thing. They were able to. She found out, this machine. Basically, what it did is it made the. Okay, so they found cancer cells within this, soft cell tissue cancers, and when this was put on it, it magnified how quickly they grew, and they've never seen it grow that quickly. And then, do you know the story about this at all? Because then she ended up
I've read Dr. Mary's Monkey.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, she was blasted in some way by a powerful electric device, which really burned her up.
Right.
And but without the specifics, it's clear that what we're getting in the way of medicine is very primitive compared to what it can be, or maybe is for somebody else. It's just not. It's not what it should be at all.
So is that what they do? They shut it all down. They'll kill the people, and I mean, why would they not want that to happen? Because then they don't have sick people, or?
Well, the answer always given is that somebody's making money,
right?
And that seems to be the case. And so we're told that is the reason. That's what's going on. People work for money, and that is certainly true. But I think it's beyond that. I think we're sort of at a level of genocide, sort of slow genocide is what's going on, and we can see this in the so-called opioid crisis now. This misnamed thing. I mean, things are just not quite right. The suppression of cannabis. Now, it turns out that there are apparently just a whole lot of cannabinoid receptors in the body, and it's very hard, or maybe impossible, to overdose on cannabis. However, it's very easy to overdose on opioids, and it's going on all the time. And I was talking to Dr. Meyer that I think 22 veterans per day commit suicide because of pain, and they're not being adequately treated. So this is sort of a genocide that's going on,
right?
And if the escalation of autism, what's called autism, is probably is a name that's been invented to take it away from the fact that it's an encephalopathy, encephalitis process. The pathology is known, and that's gone up enormously. So if you look at it all, it looks like genocide. Really,
right.
Slow genocide. But there's always going to be money involved. Somebody's going to be making money. That has to be there, so that stops the investigation. They say, "Oh, he made $1 billion, so that's why he killed everybody." Okay, next. That's it's a fig leaf. It's a mental fig. The vast money is actually a fig leaf to keep one from thinking about the fact that it's something worse.
Right.
That it's an attack on humanity, on civilization.
So what similarities and differences do you see between the different epidemics or major issues throughout history? What have they all had in common that you think?
Well, I can't say I speak about all of them, but it's very clear.
Well, in the United States,
rife. Yeah. Well, I mean, even in the United States, I'm not really prepared on this.
Okay.
Remember, I'm out of medicine for 10 years or so, and I'm really actually concentrating on other things.
Right.
But what you can say for sure is they shot down rife technology. in the 1930s, and that was the most spectacular thing I've ever heard of. And a lot of other people feel the same way. So everyone who has died and gotten sick, debilitated since 1935 or whatever, by not having a rife technology, you can say this is a genocide. This is a form of conspiracy.
Right.
It's not just random events. It's just not random. There's too much conscious attack on things.
Well,
and now you really see it with the opioids.
Right. Well, Dr. Forrest Tennant. Yeah, Dr. Forrest Tennant just recently actually decided to retire after the DEA scrutiny went on. Back in October or November, the DEA raided his office, and their charges were that they said that he was overprescribing, and that his patients were taking the opioids that he was prescribing and selling them. By the way, all charges were dropped, so there were no charges, but, they kept it going for this long, and I'm sure, it was like, I don't know, $1,000 a day or something like that to keep it going. Basically, I don't know if he was used as an example to scare other doctors or what, but, it does.
Yes, he was used as an example.
Yeah.
To scare other doctors and anything else they could do to him.
Mm-hmm.
This story's out there and all manner of stuff. There's what was it, the Hawksley cancer treatment that was suppressed. I think it was Hawksley noted, that a horse had these lesions, these cancerous lesions, and then notes the horse was eating this plant off in the corner of the pasture, and and the horse got better. So they started looking into that plant, and lo and behold, cancer people who were taking that got better, and I think a lot of them survived. And so and there's just a lot of stories on like that, and I think Mexico is full of clinics that, and I can't speak about any of them directly, but that they are persisting because people are probably getting something there that they can't get in the United States.
Right.
And they've got to have the money to go down and do it, because obviously Medicare, Medi-Cal, insurance company's not going to pay for anything that's not it's a seal of approval by the CDC.
So what's your overall take on vaccines then? Like, are all vaccines, in your opinion, unsafe or safe, or what do you think of them overall?
I don't know. I've been actually trying to find out. I'd like to talk to Andy Wakefield. I think we'll call him and see if we can find out. Yeah. One thing is they're mixing them together, so you shouldn't do MNR. You shouldn't be mixed together. No newborn should get
right. They give them the vitamin K, which has a black box warning, I know.
Right. And I think vaccinations got their big press with smallpox. And that was a real bad problem, and that seems to work. And of course that story is not as straightforward.
Well, and this is the other thing. When they say an epidemic, what is really an epidemic? Because they'll say, "Oh, epidemic happened in Walt Disney World," and they'll say, 23 kids, got the mumps or something, or the measles. And is that really an epidemic?
Well, I'll have to look up the definition of epidemic at this point.
Here, well, I'm just curious, because I'm it seems like they do it more to scare everybody.
Well, that's for sure.
Yeah. So an epidemic is a widespread occurrence of an infectious disease in a community at a particular time. Synonyms are outbreak, plague, pandemic. And then, relating to or the nature of an epidemic. Okay. So, I guess it's just what it sounds like. It's just they say epidemic.
Yeah.
Well, even like the opioid epidemic. It's to scare you.
Well, I don't think that can. That's
different.
Improper use of language.
Yeah.
Because it's not an opioid epidemic. It's failure to treat, failure to study the problem,
Right.
and then to mislabel it. I mean, there are a lot of people who have these various forms of chronic pain, like sympathetic dystrophy, and have gotten opioids, and they have done fine.
Right.
And by doing fine, they have taken care of their families. They've held their job.
Yeah.
They haven't been drug seeking. But the way the system is, that being an addict is probably the worst thing.
Right.
That having horrendous pain and killing yourself is not nearly the problem that being labeled an addict is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's misuse of language. We have to get into that because whatever you're doing, you have to see if you know what you're talking about. And this looks like a pure and simple an attack. This withdrawal of opioids for people that it was working on, and then their lives crash.
Right.
I mean, that seems.
That's
just an absolute fact.
Right, and they're focusing on overdoses and addiction, but they're leaving a whole community out of all this, which is, for intractable pain, that's 26 million people. There's around 110 million chronic pain, and chronic pain is like something like, back pain, but you don't need to have probably consistent pain medications. But those 26 million, they do, and they don't really have anything for alternatives now either, which is the scary part. And what recently came out as well is the CDC admitted finally that they inflated the numbers of the deaths. So basically, they inflated them. I think it was like from 3,000 something to it was like to 9,000. I mean, like they doubled or tripled it. So now, that kind of leaves a hole of, that's what they were basing all of their information on. And for the last, year or two, now they don't have that. So I'll be interested to see what they do with all that.
No, I mean it up. People are dying.
Yeah.
Because they kill themselves. Mm-hmm. They go out on the street because they can't get a legitimate, if I can use that term, a physician or a physician's assistant to help them. They buy heroin or something laced with fentanyl, which is deadly, and they die.
Right. Or they're dying from high levels of pain, and their body, starts creating cancers or autoimmune issues or blood pressure issues or something. But yeah, you're right. It's basically hell.
So it's failure to treat. We have legislatures, we have government people who are treating patients, or who are just saying that they're setting the lines for treating people, and they're not treating them.
Right.
They're knocking them off.
And the people that actually created these CDC guidelines, I believe there was only one actual doctor on the board when they did this, and a lot of them were like prop people that are therapists or substance abuse doctors or whatever, there was only one doctor on it, and I think he was an ER doctor. There was no doctors on there that even knew how to deal with pain issues or nothing. And I know that originally, I believe they did it behind closed doors, and then they said, no, you can't do that. So when they finally did have their meeting and opened doors, and you have to remember too, these are guidelines supposedly, but these guidelines turned into basically law. So it's tough. I mean, so when I'm talking about this, do you see any similarities between that and the vaccine issue with how they treated doctors?
Well, yeah. It's all an attack.
Mm-hmm.
It's all an attack. They knock off the doctors who are trying to help. they pay handsomely those who are doing the wrong thing, who are passing laws to say mandate vaccination, like Dr. Pan in California. They're turning their back on pain and suffering. And
what do you think about mandatory vaccines anyway?
Well, I don't see that it's something that should be done.
Right.
At this point, and I don't know if any point, but right now, no. I can't see that this should be done. Because the vaccines are so dangerous. And I don't see that, and you vaccinate people and they get the disease anyway, whatever it is.
Right.
Or you prevent them from getting measles when they're young, and then they get it when they're older, and it's a serious problem.
Yeah.
See, nothing is ever going to be absolutely straightforward. There's always going to be a blur somewhere, a grayness. And I've actually asked the question to myself: what vaccination should we have? And the only thing when I saw, I went to the movie. What is it? Thomas and Sally. Thomas Jefferson and Sally Heming. That he, that vaccination for smallpox was a big deal, and he had her because she came over to France where he was, and he wanted actually another older woman to come, and so he had to have her vaccinated to get an inoculation. And so I think a lot of the wind in the sails of vaccination has come from smallpox.
Is this going on anywhere else in the world?
Well, I think they're trying to kill them off everywhere. Yeah. Now, I certainly hope Andy Wakefield will come on, because I feel that, I feel like I'm a disappointment here. And
no, you're doing great.
Research thing.
Well,
I could be more specific about stuff.
No, you're fine. I did want to know though, if looking back now with what happened with your case, what would have you done differently, if it happened now?
Well, I still feel that I would want to tell people that vaccinations should be studied. I think what I would have done, if I had hindsight, and who has that, is that when if I'd had, and I didn't know enough when the Physician Well-Being Committee, the Star Chamber, reared its ugly head, that if I had resigned right then from the medical staff, and probably started looking at frequency medicine, holistic medicine, chiropractic, something like that, and all of that, or whatever. But I would have changed my career right then.
Okay. And
not let them take my license.
Because
they're going to do it anyway.
Right. So what other suggestions? Sorry.
Yeah, if I had bailed out, then the license would not have immediately been put on the block. Right now, go ahead.
I was going to ask you too. I mean, and they try to drain you, right? I mean, all of your your money.
Oh yeah.
That you have. So
that's always the case. You always, they always want your money.
Yeah.
They always take your money. I'm hoping, that we can put together a government that will actually function for the people. And I've been working with a group doing that. And but I don't want to evoke any false hopes in anyone. That we're in a terrible situation, that we've gotten here over a very long period of time, and we've got to work our way out of it. And we have to work our way out of it by learning and communicating with each other,
right.
Being in contact. See, everything that's happened to us is really a violation of the golden rule. You figure, well, okay, do unto others as you want them to do unto you, and don't do unto anybody what you don't want them to do to you. That's totally violated all the time in almost every sphere, it seems to me. So that's really what we want to do. Go back to everything is based on the golden rule,
Right.
and that you're not lying, cheating, and stealing, and hurting people by getting laws passed that mandate vaccinations, or or take away treatment that's helping. Obviously, the treatment of chronic pain is primitive at this point. I mean, I don't know where it's good. I mean, Germany is a place that is advanced, so they may have the answer over there. I guess the question would be what kind of medical treatments does Dick Cheney get? That's an interesting question.
Right, exactly.
And, so.
And we should get the same as, or they should get the same as us, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a negative.
I would be interested.
We don't know where medicine is. I don't know where it is.
But does anybody know? I don't know if you do. Do you know actually what, like, Congress, the Senate, whatever, what their healthcare looks like? Do we know that? Is that an open thing?
Well, we do know that, and it's very good.
Right.
They get the best. Maybe not the best, because the best may be hidden, maybe secret. But what they get is very good, certainly in respect to what most of us get. Remember, so there's that's level. They can get it all. There's what we get in various things, and then there's secret medicine, which I don't know about, but we can kind of see what it might be from what Rife did.
Yeah.
And
hey, Dr. Spencer, do you mind if we take a call?
No.
Okay. A caller from area code 262. What's your name and where are you from?
Hi, I'm Dave. I'm in Wisconsin. Thank you, Dr. Spencer and Janelle.
Hi, Dave.
Thank you, Doctor, for being brave. And what I would ask at this point is, living in Wisconsin, I actually became a surgical technician and loved medicine. Had I been pushed in that direction and realized how much I liked it, I probably might have gone about to be a doctor. However, I got congenital canal stenosis, many stenosis foramen, cut off an opioids last September, had very substandard fentanyl patches that fell off before that had oxycodone last in 2014. So I've been really pounding on this issue to try to get my oxycodone back. Now, what I want to ask is, and you don't have to answer this question, how many doctors that graduate are willing to lean towards these massive deceptions, and how many of them are self-sacrificing, would die for you?
Well, I don't know.
Get better.
I think that people are catching on. The doctors are catching on. I certainly have a lot of respect for many chiropractors now, and we were always taught to disparage chiropractors when I was in medical school.
I remember.
And
I can't be adjusted; it'll ruin me. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, this is a societal change that we've got to affect. And have you been able to get hold of any cannabinoids that help?
Yeah, I tried them. I had a rock and roll youth, and my back was burning before then. I have to confess at this point, by inhaling the smoke, I have not benefited. They did not help anything. Of course, it's a very, very bad back. It's really bad for someone who can still walk.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
But you haven't been able to see a physician who actually specializes in using cannabinoids.
That's all you can get in Wisconsin is pain management. Oh, you were going to say cannabinoids?
Yeah.
No, not Wisconsin. It's still... They just passed... They're letting farmers grow it now. Now, I don't know what the difference is between that and permitting it for recreational use or medical use. Medical use and recreational use have not been discussed. They're letting farmers grow it. I think they're after the fibers.
Right. Well, the hemp, which it was illegal in the beginning of this country to not grow hemp.
That's right.
Hemp was so useful.
Rope.
So I don't know, but I don't know enough about cannabinoids. But there are various other forms and preparations that have the degrees of effectiveness. But I can't.
Yes, I appreciate the benefits of a fraction of something, and that a lot of our medicines are, in fact, fractions of things.
Yeah.
That's true.
But I think if somebody can be controlled on opioids, and that's the only thing, well, then they need to be given opioids, especially if they're
free card.
If they're functioning on the opioid dose, whatever it is, if they're functioning, working, taking care of their family, that's
I still couldn't work, but I could walk a mile down Roosevelt Road when this doctor was in Naperville, Illinois. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for calling.
Thank you. Good luck.
He brought up a point. He was asking, how many doctors are there out there that are just going along with the program. I think a lot of doctors, it's not just going along with the program. I think they're just, they're scared. They're going to lose their entire life, and and so that's why I've been really careful of, we shouldn't blame the doctor because it's not really their fault. Although, if we all would stand up together, maybe we'd have more of a chance. But I do see doctors doing that. I do see, they're starting to get together, and it's they have a function, and it's structured, and I see that with all of this. I mean, I do see it happening, so it's definitely not over.
Maybe we should work with the veterans.
That would be a good idea.
Maybe we should work with the veterans.
Yes.
And I don't know how to exactly initiate that, but I can.
Well, in what way are you thinking about it?
Gordon Dove.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just on this program on improvement in medical care. But certainly chronic pain. We can talk about chronic pain right now and post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
Okay, but those two items, because those have come under the gun as far as I can tell. Well, certainly chronic pain. I don't know what they're doing with PTSD at this point.
Yeah, I don't know.
Apparently, there's some frequency care medication that can be helped by some frequency treatment.
Really?
But
I don't know. I'll have to look into that, and we'll have to if you come back on, which I'd like, that would be really great to be able to talk about. Something I did want to ask you though, because I did want to. I know you. We talked about you coming back on, and when you do, can you kind of give a little snippet of what you'd be interested in focusing on?
Well, okay. What I've done really basically is trying to find out exactly how everything works. Mm-hmm. Exactly what is the problem, where is the point of failure, and I think I've reached a very high level in doing that. And what is this is the way I would tell some people to go about it. Learning the fact that the entire Earth we were hit, North America and Europe were hit by comets 12,900 years ago approximately, mm-hmm. and this caused major extinctions, and everything changed at that point, and there was an ice age civilization on this planet,
right?
And it must have gotten badly whacked when this happened. And it seems like the story is that the human civilization began to develop after this, Egypt being a remarkable development. Mm-hmm. And I think that something out of the Ice Age civilization is subverting what we're trying to do.
Really?
Because it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. I mean, it just seems like everything goes wrong. And why is that? It's not like nobody knows what's a better way, but we're forced into to doing it wrong. And money is a huge part of this because we're controlled through money. Because obviously, you see that with the doctors who lose their livelihood. You lose your license and your livelihood. So I guess you practice on a street corner. I don't know. So money is critically important. So we need to figure out how we're going to control money so that it's not used to attack us.
Okay.
So that's kind of the 3 points I'm making with that. And I'm writing letters now to a couple of people and trying to really put it all down.
Okay.
But it's kind of long,
No, I'm super excited to talk about that. So we're going to wrap up here, but was there anything else that you wanted to close out, last comments or any thoughts before you, for the audience? Before
Sure, I think it's important. The tyrants like to work in the dark. See if you can collect names on who's really doing stuff, who's making life worse, who is violating the golden rule. And we need to have a list of that, of people who are doing that, just because they don't like the light. They really don't. And that's one way to go forward on this, is to point out who is abusing humanity.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr.
Like
Edwards...
Dr. Pan, for instance.
Oh, yeah. Well, Pan runs, He doesn't stay around. Yeah. Do you think they'll get him out this election?
Probably. I don't know. I mean, when you start talking about how elections are fixed next.
And by the way, for our audience,
nothing would work out.
Just so you know, Senator Pan is California District 6 senator, and he is one of the people that created the mandatory vaccines in California. So, just in case you didn't know. All right, well, Dr. Edward Spencer, thank you so much for coming on and, sharing all your thoughts and telling us about, what happened with you losing your license. I'm so sorry that happened to you, but, I'm so thankful we met because you are a genius and you have such amazing ideas and thoughts. So I cannot wait to have you back on. I appreciate you coming on tonight.
Oh, thank you. That's a very kind word. It's good to be here, and I say goodbye to everyone.
Okay, have a good night.
Keep at it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, CAW Nation. Well, thank you so much for joining in tonight. Just don't forget, next Tuesday, 8/7 Central, it's the Doctor's Corner with Dr. Klein. And then Wednesday, 8/7 Central, we'll be back with CAW Nation. Victoria Swan will be on. She is a director. She will be having a documentary she's creating on chronic pain patients. So you won't want to miss that. Hope you all have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Conspiracies Against Wellness with your host, Janelle Elgaway. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers, and not necessarily those of EXG LLC, its employees, or sponsors. Copyright 2018 by EXG LLC. All rights reserved.